Welcome to this all-new edition of the Fairfax Sports Report here on the Fairfax Sport Network. I am your host, BJ Kubaroulis, alongside of a very special guest in studio with us tonight. As you can see right here on my side is John Almquist, administrator of FCPS's athletic training program, and as always, John Marcario of the Connection newspapers and Dave Bushenfeld of the Times papers. And we're going to get a chance to pick John's brain here about what athletic trainers do. We're not going to call them trainers, though. We don't want to get in trouble here. But before we do that, let's thank the folks that make this show possible. And, of course, we're talking about our underwriters. Special thanks to our teammates, CCI Screen Printing, for all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. And don't forget about our upcoming football blowout, the Fairfax Sports Report football preview, August 29th at 10 p.m., on the 30th at 7, and for you late night birds, August 31st at 2 a.m. We're going to talk all about all 35, 40 now high schools. I don't know how many there are in Fairfax County. We keep sprouting one every year, but more football that means, so can't hate on that. More football and the football blowout coming to you soon, August 29th. Well, guys, speaking of football, we are joined, as I said before, by John Almquist here, the administrator of FCPS's training program for athletic trainers. John has had a wealth of experience in the county. John, how long have you been working in the county in any sort of athletic training capacity?
I've been here since 1983 as an athletic trainer. Started at Marshall High School and spent 17 years there as an athletic trainer and a teacher, and then moved into the administrative role. And so now we're over at the superintendent's office at Gatehouse, and we're still now dealing with the 50 athletic trainers in Fairfax County's 25 high schools.
So what you're saying is you've been doing this as long as we've been 2 years old.
I was born in 1983, actually.
Yeah.
So doing it for quite a while. So you've got the
while.
knowledge. And speaking of knowledge, our athletic trainers in Fairfax County need knowledge to deal with injuries and more, and being hurt and injured. We'll talk about the difference between the two. But right now it's football season. The heat is out, and you guys are out obviously dealing with a lot of injuries, heat-related and more. We'll get to that in just a minute. But before we get to that, I want to show the folks at home exactly what a certified athletic trainer is. And this is according to the national website for athletic trainers. You see there at the bottom. What is a certified athletic trainer? Certified athletic trainers are healthcare professionals who specialize in preventing, recognizing, managing, and rehabilitating injuries that result from physical activity. Now, as I mentioned early in the show, there's a difference between calling someone a trainer and an athletic trainer. And certified athletic trainers often don't take too kindly to being called trainers. John, tell us the difference and why so.
Basically, we have an identity crisis because the personal trainers have come out and really done a great job with marketing. And they have become very popular. And it's not to put them down, but they deal with healthy people, making them stronger, faster, maybe smaller or whatever. But they have a unique niche, but they don't have the medical background as athletic trainers, as certified athletic trainers do. So we have to go through 4 years of college in an health accredited program to become eligible to sit for a national board exam. And then we also, in Virginia, have to be licensed by the Board of Medicine. So we're a healthcare professional, as opposed to an individual at a gym who is just basically working with a healthy person, making them do well or get a stronger body or whatever. So basically we're also, we have to deal with the injuries, and that's a major part. We not only the prevention, but also the recognition, the evaluation, and setting up a treatment plan. And a lot of that incorporates rehabilitation of that injury. And one of our unique qualities is that we have the ability to functionally test and determine when it's appropriate for them to return to play safely. And that's our role in the schools.
And that's often difficult, John, as you know, with kids, when you're dealing with kids, and as you see here, are 5 facts about athletic trainers. More than 50% of the certified athletic trainers work outside of school settings to help rehabilitate people and provide services to all those in need. And you can also see there that ATs specialize in patient education, as you mentioned, just to kind of prevent and really educate people, and that's really what it comes down to. That's the major difference, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. An athletic trainer is someone who's, as you mentioned, a healthcare professional.
Right, they can actually treat the injury, evaluate it, and then also, we do work closely with a physician. And when it's outside, when an injury is outside the scope of practice of the athletic trainer, we refer to our the physician. And the families in Fairfax County have the ability to go to their family physician. But we also have resources and connections with sports medicine related physicians, the sports medicine specialist, so we can get a quicker referral perhaps and things like that.
Now, with two Johns on the side, I think we need to give you like a cool nickname like John Squared or something like that. But how many certified athletic trainers are at each high school in the county, and what do they do at each of the schools?
Well, one of the things that's nice about Fairfax County is that we have 2 certified athletic trainers at each high school. One is a full-time athletic trainer. That's all they do. The second athletic trainer is also a teacher, so they get a stipend for their athletic training duties. So they're putting in 50, 60-hour weeks, and this is the way. When I started back in '83, I was the only athletic trainer, and I also taught a full load. So those are long weeks, and we had a high burnout rate. So what we've done is we first added a second athletic trainer, and both were teachers and athletic trainers. And then more recently, 3 years ago, we went to a full-time position. And that has really helped with the burnout, has really helped with the communication between the parents, the physicians, the coaches, and the athletes, trying to get that communication network going and substantial, and getting everybody help that's needed. And I think that's one of the unique benefits of being in Fairfax County is where you have those resources.
Right. Now, you mentioned the burnout. How have the athletic trainers gone in terms of how many have applied or how many have been in the county since you've been starting back in '83?
Well, let's see. You didn't say my age was going to come up on this show, but basically, right now, there's one athletic trainer that's still working in the system as an athletic trainer and a teacher who has been here as long as I have. We just retired the last 2 over the last 2 years that were with us. But we're one of the holdouts. We're 2 of the holdouts, basically. It was a lot of fresh new blood. But the other thing is the athletic training profession has changed with regard to it's something called the education reform. And over the past several years, the education needed to become an athletic trainer and to be eligible to sit for this national exam has actually been ramped up considerably. So the folks coming out are much better educated. And the folks that have been around as long as I have, we've had to take a solid effort in trying to maintain our credibility and our education through continuing education, which is also one of the things that is required by the athletic trainer. We have to have 75 hours of continuing education every 3 years.
Now, BJ mentioned at the beginning with fall sports practices getting underway, it's important for athletes to understand the difference between being hurt and being injured. In your definition, what is the difference between those 2 terms?
Well, basically, sometimes it's tough to determine the difference between the 2, but an injury really is when there's trauma to tissue. And, be that any tissue in the body, from the head injury down to the sprain or strain, or even simple bruise or contusion. Being hurt is you can feel pain, and that could just simply be muscle soreness from working harder, which is really what we want our kids to do. We want them to work harder and grow in strength, but with that comes a little bit of pain in the process, and sometimes it's tough, especially with the younger folks. One part of our process is to educate them on what is the difference between the 2. We always want to be able to be accessible to these kids. So if something's bothering them, they need to know that the athletic trainer is there for them. And our main focus is to make sure they stay on the field, not to keep them off the field, but keep them on the field, but make sure they're safe and healthy doing so.
And I can assume that at times that probably gets you guys into trouble,
Absolutely.
whether it be you're
It's
probably the
tough.
guy in the hard place between the coach, between the parent, and between the kid, and you have everybody's best interest at heart. But really, from my little knowledge of what you guys do, you've got the kid at heart. That's really and sometimes against what even the kid wants to do. Correct?
And the parents and the coaches and everybody else is hammering down at you. But the bottom line is we also have the education to use science to help us with that decision. The other thing that's kind of unique is that even though we are affiliated with the school, the emotional impact is taken down a little bit with regard, and we have a professional ethic to follow, which means that we have to make sure that the kid is safe. We don't want to sacrifice this kid's body because a lot of things that may seem minor right now but could have long-term lasting effects, and we want to prevent those detrimental effects as well.
Well, 2 things that are not minor, that are big hot button issues right now at the high school level and also at the pro level with some developments in the last couple of days about concussions in the NFL and college and even down to high school. sports. And we mentioned earlier before we got going on the show that a lot of times kids don't even know that they've been injured, and they may have a concussion, and they just think they're fighting through an injury. Talk a little bit about the two main issues right now, and specifically for Fairfax County, how they deal with heat illness and concussions.
Well, concussions is something that we've been actually involved with over the past several years with the research in neuropsychological testing for concussion management, and we've been on the forefront of the changes that have developed. In sports medicine, used to be that if you didn't get knocked out, lost consciousness, you didn't have a concussion. And unfortunately, there's still some physicians that still have been trained way back when and believe that.
That's like the Bear Bryant School of Medicine.
It's a little tough, and sometimes we have that problem where we know there's something going on there. This kid is not reacting properly. They send him to their family doc, and the family doc says, oh, I think he could go back in, and we know he's not safe to go back in yet. So then we have that issue to deal with. But one of the things that's nice about our system is that we have been in the forefront of the changes that have happened in concussion management. And one of the things we just implemented this year is a system-wide neuropsychological testing system called Impact, and we can now offer that to all of our athletes to get a baseline, and if they do have symptoms of a concussion, we can use that test as part of the toolbox that we use to assess the overall kid. And it's not a one-stop shop. There's other things that have to come into play in doing an evaluation for a concussion, but that is one of the things that we have now implemented. With heat injury and heat illnesses, those things are, the science has actually changed over the last couple of years. Whereas it used to be the definition of heat stroke, for example, which is the worst thing because that can cause death, used to be when the definition used to be hot, dry, red skin. And we just heard on the news the other night a youth coach make the statement, we're keeping an eye on the kids, we know it's hot out, but as long as they're still sweating, they're okay. And now we know that that is not true.
Right.
The majority of people who have actually died from heat stroke over the past several years have all been sweating profusely. So the definition of change. It's core temperature of 104 degrees and up plus central nervous system changes. Those are the things that we have to be very cognizant to know the new medicine, know the treatment, and what the treatment now is, immediate cooling. Where years ago they used to say, don't put them in an ice water bath because it might cause shock. Well, now we know that ice water bath is the way to cool their core as quickly as possible, and that's how you treat.
A lot of times we'd like to put John in an ice water bath after the show because he certainly gets heated up during some of our arguments. John, did you have an extra question?
What are the two most common types of injuries that you see? And just to enlighten the people of Fairfax County, what is a common injury that players in Texas might happen to come across?
Well, the most common, we do injury surveillance and data collection on all of our injuries, and we know that the ankle is one of the most injured body parts. The wrist and hand is another one that's up there, as well as the knee. The types of injuries are usually contusions. The minor ones are contusions, and they go into sprains and strains, which is injuries to the ligament and then injuries to the muscle and tendon. But in other areas of the country, I have some friends in Texas and one in Arizona who they have to sweep the practice fields to make sure there's no rattlesnakes and scorpions out there. So, we don't have those issues here yet anyway. I heard there's a coyote somewhere in Fairfax County. We have to watch that now. A couple of rabid raccoons occasionally. But basically, what we try to do is create the safest environment possible for our kids. We know injuries are inherent in sport. But if we can do anything possible, we're going to try to implement a program that's going to create the safest possible environment for these kids to participate, because we know the value of participation in sports goes above and beyond just simply playing. It attracts or addresses the issues in academics and every other part of the body as they go through life, or the kid goes through life, and it really helps. So I think this is one of the important things we ought to maintain.
Folks, if you're just joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report, it's an all-new episode, and we've got John Almquist of Fairfax County Public Schools, administrator of the athletic training program here, answering our questions about the issues that high school athletes often face, especially in the early goings of the football season when they're just out on the hot fields. But there's a lot more to it that athletic trainers often deal with. Dave, you had another question for John.
I just wanted to jump back to the concussions for a second, because you mentioned personal physicians, and you got the opinions of the coaches and the parents. Who has the final say of when the kid can go back onto the field when he's had a concussion?
In Fairfax County Public Schools, the school board attorney and risk management department and I, several years ago, developed the statement that basically the certified athletic trainer is one of the 7 or 8 people that have the ability to exclude an athlete from participation. And when it really comes down to it, anyone can exclude that person from participation for whatever reason they're expert in.
Right.
The coach can do it because they can't play well. The parent can do it because they didn't clean up his room. But basically, the athletic trainer is there to want to be one of the last people that can say, yes, he can safely play after rehabilitation from that injury.
What, in your opinion, what is a good amount of time that somebody could take from a concussion, ranging from a not so serious concussion to a major concussion? I mean, what is the standard protocol that you usually recommend for someone to stay out?
One of the things that's interesting is that over the past several years, the grading of concussions has pretty much gone away. We don't do that anymore. And that has also eliminated the set pattern of if you have a first-degree concussion, you have to be out for 1 week. Basically, we're relying on symptoms and the neuropsychological testing on that individual because everybody acts so differently and reacts so differently. So we don't want to, in some cases, 3 days is plenty of time, and in other cases, a week is not enough. And so we want to make sure that when a kid goes back, one of the things in schools is we have to remember that the reason why we have a school system is for education. That's the business we're in, it's education. We don't want to jeopardize the ability for that kid to learn. And one of the things we know about concussions now is that it's not only physical exertion can slow down the healing process of a concussion, but it's also the cognitive exertion, and that has been impacted. So we will also now try to communicate with the teachers with regard to with the kid's concussion, the guidance counselors, to bring the whole team into play to determine, is everything going right with this kid's, is he learning, is he acting properly? And that's where the parents come in too. So one of the things that we're also doing is educating the parents and educating the kids on signs and symptoms, because sometimes it's the best friend that realizes that his buddy isn't acting quite right. And that is so critical, and they know the importance now to bring it to the attention to the athletic trainer's attention. Instead, years ago, they used to say, "Oh, don't worry about it," or "Don't tell anybody because you might not be able to play." Yeah. But that can really jeopardize a kid's life and academic advancement. So that's what we want to be careful of.
Let's backtrack for just a minute to see what we've learned here about athletic trainers and what they do. Let's go back to our 5 facts about athletic trainers. We got this off the national website for trainers, and you see right there at the top, all athletic trainers have a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university. That's just the minor part of the education, and most of these trainers go on.
Athletic trainers.
Athletic trainers, there you go. Go on. 70% have training, have a master's degree or doctorate. Athletic trainers are regulated and licensed healthcare workers. And as you can see here, more than 50% of NATA, that's the National Certification Board, if you will, certified athletic trainer members work outside of a school athletic settings and provide services to people of all ages. And as you can see there, they often help to prevent re-injury or prevent further injury because of their ability to educate not just young athletes, but also all the people that they work with. We've talked a lot, John, about the medical education and all that you guys have to do just to get on the field, if you'll say. But a lot of people don't realize the amount of dedication it takes to be an athletic trainer, where you have a football coach who works 6-7 months out of the season now, and most of those guys, let's be honest now, are pretty much going year-round. You have basketball coaches that work the winter season, and then they do other leagues. You guys work all year.
Yeah, pretty much. They may get a little bit of July off unless they take on some extra camps, and sometimes the pressure from the coaches who are doing those camps, they end up working the camps as well. It's also the dealing with the football. In the colleges and in the pros, you're dealing with, most of the athletic trainers are dealing with one sport at a time. Whereas in the high school setting, we're dealing with all the sports. For this fall here, we have field hockey, cross country, cheerleading, football, volleyball. And before that is over, we have to start thinking about basketball, wrestling, swim, dive. So there doesn't seem to be any rest for the weary, especially if you're in a school where it actually goes to playoffs, where sometimes there's a lot of, in between seasons when you should be having a little bit of a break, we end up having to work a little bit more. So it is a tough road to hoe. So
If there's anybody that understands that, it's definitely a sports writer.
There you go.
We often face the same issues,
exactly.
John.
Now, for you, which sport? Now, keep in mind, football is obviously going to have more people playing it, but people. I don't know how to phrase this, but for the number of people that play the sport, which is the highest percentage of sport that has the most injuries? Is it football? Is it baseball? Is it volleyball? I mean, which is? I mean,
From a research perspective, we call it injury per exposure rate. And exposure rate is in one athlete going onto the field one time or participating in a practice once. So the injury per exposure rate is approximately 5 to 8 injuries per 1,000 exposures in football. Whereas the next, I think, is a combination of soccer, lacrosse. We're dealing with about 3 or 4. So it is definitely less, but you also have to consider that football is a collision sport, a head-to-head collision sport. Even men's lacrosse, which is also a collision sport, but it's a linear collision sport.
Right.
And so we do have a considerable number less injuries in that. What we have found is over the years, and it's been improving with with better education programs for coaches and things, but cheerleading was one of the blips on the radar that came up that we saw a lot of injuries in the head, face, and neck in cheerleading that we weren't ready for when they went from a sideline cheer to a competition cheer. Mm-hmm. And luckily, through a lot of efforts through the cheerleading associations as well as the county, and getting better education programs for the coaches, I think a lot of that has calmed down some. But those are one of the things that we also have. We're always constantly looking at things like that. And what are other areas that we need to address that we can try to prevent some injuries? And when things come up on the radar, we look at them, we assess them, and then try to implement a plan to help reduce the injuries and see if that works.
Well, John, we want to thank you for all the knowledge that you brought to the show today. One more time for you folks at home, if you want to get in touch with your trainer, go to
Athletic trainer.
He's good. He's good, this guy. He's got experience, over 20 years of experience of doing that.
20-some.
20-some.
Stay around more.
Go to the website, www.fcps.edu. That's Fairfax County Public Schools. Or you can go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. We're going to shoot a link up there. That way you can get in touch with your trainer. Have questions, athletic trainer. Have any questions? Ask your local athletic trainer. 2 in every school, so you shouldn't have a problem finding your athletic trainer. Want to thank you, John, for coming on. John
thank you, guys.
Almquist of Fairfax County Public Schools. Come back for more here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report here on the Fairfax Sports Network. I'm your host, BJ Kubarulis, alongside of Paul Frummelt of the Connection Newspapers, John Marcario of the Connection Newspapers, and Dave Bushenfeld of the Times Papers. All of us get together every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report, and local sports writers talk about local sports, from youth sports to high school sports to adult sports. Pretty much any sporting event happening in the area, you're going to find it here and on our website at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Before we get too far into the next segment of this show, we want to tell you about our upcoming Fairfax Sports Report football preview blowout. That's right, guys. We are blowing it out. August 29th, 10 p.m., August 30th, 7 p.m., and on the 31st, for you special late-night birds, 2 a.m., our Fairfax Sports Report football preview blowout. Go to the website, fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, to find out more about our upcoming football preview blowout, guys. And when I say blowout, I mean blowout.
You're not lying.
We're going to blow it out.
Not lying.
All right,
son.
gentlemen. Speaking of a local athlete that has been getting it done and blown it out, John Marcario, Mr. Mitchell Frank is the Fairfax Sports Network's Athlete of the Week. Tell us a little bit about Mitchell.
Yes, Mitchell is from Annandale High School. He plays a little tennis. He won the boys 14 singles USTA National Open and was the runner-up in the 16s National Open. He's currently the #1 ranked tennis player by the USTA for boys age 14 and under. He's from Fairfax County. This county produces a lot of tennis talent, especially with Robinson winning the state title, with Drew Courtney winning the singles and doubles title, and the Fairfax twins, Palamucci sisters, winning the doubles titles as well this year. So Mitchell Frank keeping it up with tennis in the area.
And Mitchell Frank, not only a guy, like you mentioned, these other kids that went to the state tournament, this young man from Annandale won the entire country, basically, at under 14 years old. That makes him a freshman in high school. And speaking of young kids that have certainly accomplished a lot before getting to the high school level, Dave Bushenfeld, who's here on this panel with us of the Times Papers, wrote a story about the SYA young men, the little baseball players, if you will. It's that special time of year, guys. Little League baseball is what everyone watches, and now with ESPN picking it up and doing the World Series, and it just gives everyone an opportunity really to get back to their younger days when they were kids playing out there in the dirt fields and the sand lots and whatnot. Kind of reminds you and brings you home, if you will, no matter where you are. Dave, tell us a little bit about the SYA club, and I believe we do have their coach, Rob San Martin, joining us in just a minute. Before we welcome in Coach San Martin, let's talk a little bit about what they accomplished.
Yeah, well, the Southwestern Youth Association East Majors All-Stars, it's my personal favorite story of the summer so far. I got to cover them for a few weeks. They won the District 10 tournament title, the Virginia State title, and also went to the semifinals of the Southeastern Region Tournament, which left them 2 wins away from making it all the way to Williamsport and the Little League World Series, which I'm sure everybody knows all about that. They pretty much dominated the District 10 schedule. They won every single game in the tournament, outscored their opponents 50-1, which was ridiculous if you ask me. Gave up a run in their first game and then blanked their next 4 opponents. And as you can see there, they beat the lower Loudoun national team 10-0 in the district championship. State tournament, actually a little bit of a shocker. Their first game, they lost 1-0. And this was a team, they scored 50 runs in 5 games. That's 10 runs a game. And they got shut out by Abingdon in their first game. Thought maybe they were on their way up, but they responded with a 15-6 win over York County and a 15-3 win over Essex to win their pool and make it onto the quarterfinals. They had a bit of a tough game against Tuckahoe, who's won a couple of state titles in the last few years. They beat them 7-6, went on to beat Grottoes 18-2 in the semifinals of the state tournament, and squared off with West Springfield, the national team from West Springfield in the finals. Beat them in 2 out of 3 games. They beat them 5-3 in 7 innings in the first game of the finals, and 11-10 in a crazy game in the second to win the state title before moving on to Florida for the Southeast Region title.
And here to tell us all about that state final and more is Coach Rob San Martin, coach of the SYA East Little League team that represented the area so well. Coach, are you there?
I am, gentlemen. Thanks for having me tonight.
Hey, Coach, thanks for being with us. Dave Bushenfeld got an opportunity to cover the team extensively. Dave, I'm throwing it to you, buddy. This is your expertise. It's your world, Little League Baseball.
Sure. Coach, I guess just to start off, talk about what made this team so special.
Well, this is a group of boys that 13 of them that have been playing together on and off for 4+ years now, and it was their opportunity that they finally had a chance to put it all together where each one of them could contribute in everything they've been working on over the course of the years. And they just had one heck of a team that was very solid up and down the lineup.
Coach, you mentioned, you were quoted as saying, over the course of a week, these men developed from young boys to young men. So talk a little about, expand on that comment that you made.
Down in the Southeast Regional, the first thing that happens with Little League is the players and coaches get separated from their families. It's a compound environment down there where the parents are off limits for all intent and purposes. You have to check the kids in and out as a team when you move someplace. So they quickly became responsible for everything they had to do in their day-to-day lives, from getting up in the morning to taking care of their necessities to feeding themselves to getting dressed, sorting their laundry to getting their laundry appropriately ready for the wash. So they quickly had to figure out how to be able to survive in this world without mom and dad there to help them.
Now, Coach, you pretty much dominated District 10 play, got a little bit tougher in the state tournament, but talk about the quality of opponents that you faced down in the Southeast Region tournament in Florida.
The quality of the opponents in the Southeast Region was, I would actually say, was on par with the West Springfield team that we played in the States. The difference was down there you start to see the teams that really have some of the more dominating pitching. And that was, kind of what slowed us down and what slowed all the other teams down with that pitching aspect.
Mm-hmm. What was the feeling after the 3-2 loss to Warner Robins on the field with your players?
That was pretty rough. I can remember looking in the dugout with just one out, looking down and seeing all the kids kind of looking up, hoping that something good was going to happen, and just couldn't get that timely hit that we needed, and they were extremely disappointed because from a play level, watching enough games, they knew that they were good enough to compete with all 4 of those teams that were there in the finals. Again, we just couldn't get the right hit at the right time to put us over the edge there.
At what point did they feel that sense of accomplishment after that disappointment? Have they felt it yet?
I think they have, because they've seen their names in papers and periodicals, and they've had people congratulating them, so they know it's a great accomplishment. They know that they've gone further than any prior SYA team. It's still very difficult for them to stomach watching the stuff on TV, especially the Georgia team, but they are rooting for that team to move forward in the Little League World Series.
And Coach, you mentioned, we talked a little bit about the Warner Robins games. It was only a one-run loss, but you guys, you weren't one of those teams that got in there and just blew people away. You guys really gritted it out at some point, especially in the Southeastern Region tournament. I believe we have a graphic to show the folks at home exactly what it was you guys did in the Southeastern Region tournament. You SYA East 7, South Berkeley, a team from West Virginia, 6, and in the next game, a 5-2 victory, a little bit more comfort and cushy win there, but then again, another one-run win there, against North Palm Beach. You guys had a couple of one-run games. In those close games, you talk about the kids growing up away from their parents and not being with their parents at times. They grew up on the baseball field as well.
Absolutely. That's a good observation. All of the games down in the Southeast region, other than the one game that Florida had against somebody, I don't remember what it was, which was a 10-run game, all of the games down there within 1 or 2 runs, and were all very tight games. There was never a blowout. Teams were very good, and unfortunately it came down to who got the timely hit or who made the untimely mistake.
Now, Coach, for the adults that are watching it, how would you compare the pressure that these little kids face to an adult situation for others that never played Little League Baseball that couldn't compare?
So the pressure that these kids faced were, if you can put yourself in a position, and I don't think it matters if you're an adult or a child, they knew that if they won one more game, they would have the opportunity to play live on ESPN. I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I don't know of individual firsthand that's been on ESPN Live. So that pressure was mounting all through the week, and you were answering questions for ESPN, so they knew what was on the line.
Absolutely, Coach. A great group of kids that you had on a magical run. Coach Rob San Martin, coach of the SYA East Little League All-Stars, a phenomenal season, one game short of the Little League World Series, but they are the World Series champs here to us in this local area. And Coach, now you can say you've been on the Fairfax Sports Report live with us here on the Fairfax Sports Network. Thanks for joining us, Coach.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night.
Thanks, Coach.
Well, Dave, you got a chance to cover these guys, and you know Coach San Martin, and having covered the team. Tell us a little bit, from a reporter's standpoint, what are some of the intangibles that you don't get from the graphics we show up there on the screen, and you don't get from the numbers? These kids, is a special group of kids.
They really were a great group of guys, and like you said, they've been playing together, most of them, for a long time, so they really had a nice bond going. And an interesting point, after every practice, the team had a little team dinner. All the families came, so even the families were close friends, and they really got along. And like you said, 1 through 13, I guess they had 13 guys on the team. Everyone contributed at some point, either in the field, on the mound, at the plate, and they really just got it done when they needed to.
I have a feeling that some of those kids and some of those names that were mentioned, as we talked about and Coach San Martin said, that were mentioned in the local papers and periodicals, I have a feeling we're going to be seeing those names quite a bit once they get to the next level, high school level, and continue on in their baseball careers. Still a lot to accomplish for those young men, and they should be keeping their heads very high. For more information on the SYA East Little League team, go to the website, fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. And speaking of a magical run, guys, that they had, in just a moment here, a commissioner of the Northern Virginia Football Officials Association, Dennis Hall, is going to be joining us to talk a little bit about, athletics in our area. We've had an athletic trainer on with us today, John Almquist of Fairfax County Public Schools. We just had a Little League coach on with us, and now another commissioner. We're just so lucky here tonight to have all these different folks weighing in on different subjects that affect our Northern Region fans and Fairfax County Public Schools and Fairfax Sports Report fans. Dennis Hall, are you there?
Yes, I am.
How you doing, Dennis? Dennis Hall, the commissioner of the Northern Virginia Football Officials Association. Paul Frummelt of the Connection newspapers here, sitting right next to me. This young man wrote a story about your Football Officials Association, some of the challenges that you guys face, and some of the good that you do for the community. Paul, take it away.
Well, Dennis, when we talked about in the story, we talked about the training regimen that these new first, second-year recruits go through. Talk a little bit about the training regimen of these new recruits.
Well, ironically, we just left the field at Oakland High School where we did a big combine for about 33 officials to have them looked at varsity crews to try and fill the holes they work. But what our trainees do is we have a 2-year training program, and it consists of rule study and mechanics. And we teach you everything you need to know, where to stay on the field, how to get there, how to come back, what to look for, and basically the common sense aspect of officiating. We don't want to be overproductive by calling fouls all the time. The whole goal of a football official, especially at the high school level, is safety and unfair advantage, and a lot of common sense.
And Dennis, you mentioned 2-year program. Used to be a 3-year program. Talk about the problems that the NVFOA has faced with not getting enough recruits out.
Right. Back when I started 36 years ago, it was a 3-year program, twice a week. So you had about 6 or 7 hours a week of on the field and in classroom studies. We realized about 4 or 5 years ago that we were losing some people because of the time commitment. So we reduced it to 1 night a week and 2 years, and hoping that by the time you finish your second year, you'll get some varsity experience, and in your third year, you can make a crew. It's like any other sport. It's hard to get volunteers to do things, even though our guys get paid, and the pay is pretty respectable for what you do now because you are well learned and taught how to do things. But the biggest concept is you're giving back to the community, and we want commitment. And that's the hardest thing to get from people these days, especially in the metro area. There's just so much to do. So we started with 36 this year, and we're down to 21 first-year people right now.
And go
Well,
ahead.
you know, one of the issues that the NVFOA faces in this area is the growth in schools. You know, you have a
Right.
school sprouting up every 5 minutes, especially in the wild, wild west out there in Loudoun County.
Right.
You got schools,
Loudon's added 6.
right, yeah, you've got schools popping up. So where you may be actually, your recruiting numbers may be up, you still have more contracts and more schools to deal with. How are you guys in the NVFOA trying to get more people to come out?
We advertise we do PSAs on radio. We do it in papers. Articles like yours helped us a lot. We've had a number of calls since your article came out. We actually took on 2 new officials yesterday, which is late in the season, but we'll do our best to get them caught up. Word of mouth is great. Anything we can possibly do to get people brought in, we'll do it. We get involved in the Fairfax County Football Hall of Fame, and we put an advertisement in their program. We're participants at their presentations. It's just anything. Again, the biggest thing is word of mouth. But it does take a lot of time, and some people who would love to do it, they just don't have the time. There's just too much going on.
Well, Dennis, before we cut you loose here, just wanted to let people know from you, if they do want to get involved with the NVFOA, how does one go about doing that?
The easiest way is go to our website, which is www.nvfoa.com. That's for Northern Virginia Football Officials Association. Or they can call me at 1-540-837-1316.
All right, Dennis. Well, hopefully your phone will start ringing off the hook here soon in a bit once this show
That'd be
airs.
great.
But we certainly appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. We're always here to help and help to get more guys in stripes to get yelled at, because as journalists, we get yelled at just as much as you
I
guys.
understand. We appreciate all you do for us.
Dennis, thanks so much for the time. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
So, Paul, and obviously Dennis gave out his contact information, but also in your story on the connectionnewspapers.com, you can read Paul Frummelt's story about the issues that officials do face. Tell us a little bit more in depth. Dennis mentioned the training program that they go through, but a little bit more in depth of what you can expect. If I'm, Joe referee signing up tomorrow, what am I going to go through?
Mr. Joe Referee, do you enjoy the classroom? Because
Certainly.
they are in the classroom learning these rules. They know these rules inside and out, and obviously they have to know these rules. And the MVFOA, the great training program, makes sure that it takes a long time to see the field first. These first-year trainees just now, they started in June. They're seeing the field now. They're getting their scrimmages in. They'll be there shadowing people. And it takes 2 years before they even touch a varsity field just to make sure that they have those rules down. It's an intense training program, and what Commissioner Hall told me was that is the problem is it is so time intensive. He said when he's the one that schedules the games and makes sure all the officials are where they need to be. Some officials can't work because they're going out of town.
Right.
He said 10 years ago, you gave Friday, you gave a Saturday, you made sure you had the middle school games too. So you're seeing a lack of commitment, and hopefully these new trainings we're seeing, and it's great to hear that he got two new recruits from the article, is coming out and know that this is important to the community. You know, these kids are playing, and these referees are right there with them, giving it to the community.
And it's certainly not an easy thing to know that not only are you going to be essentially volunteering your time for a little bit of pay, something we know a lot here about at the Fairfax Sports Report, but also that you're going to get yelled at by everyone. You're never going to be right, and that's a difficult thing to face as well. But you know what? I think it's for a true sports fan. I think it's for someone who enjoys being around the game. And even though it takes 2 years, seems like a long way away, it's something like golf. You can do this the rest of your life, you know. And also, you know, varsity is the key word in that sentence. You're going to be doing some middle school, some youth sports, and some JV along the way to help hone your skills. So certainly, well worth the read is Paul Frummelt's article on connectionnewspapers.com. You can visit fairfaxsportsnetwork.com for more information about how to get in touch with Dennis Hall and the NVFOA, the Northern Virginia Football's Officials Association. Well, speaking of Paul Frummelt, this man is just lighting it up here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Something we like to do every week here for our new viewers in Loudoun County is the Loudoun Report. And Paul Frummelt, with so much wealth of experience under his belt from Fairfax County, having covered the area for so long. Paul, what is in this week's Loudoun Report?
Well, we may have our upcoming football preview coming up on August 29th, but golf has started. Golf has started, folks, and one of the most interesting stories last year of the Dulles District Golf was Briar Woods, the second-year school, winning the district tournament. Now, golf has started again, as I said, in Briar Woods, right there up top in the district schedule. Everybody's only played one game, but Briar Woods, Broad Run, Loudoun County, and Freedom all have a win under their belt. Now, regular season title holders, Potomac Falls, did lose their first game, so already a little bit of drama in the Loudoun District Golf area. And I should mention that these standings were from LoudounPrepSports.com. And then moving on, a great story, the Nicole Cup for Nicole Megaloudis, who, as Loudoun fans know, was a great Potomac Falls soccer player whose life ended way too short. And there's a foundation to give scholarships out, the Nicole Megaloudis Foundation, and they held their annual 4x4 4-on-4 soccer tournament, and it was held over the weekend at Potomac Park over in Loudoun County, and another great success raising money to have that foundation continue and award scholarships to very deserving players. And then last thing, a little fun for the Connection newspapers, something we love to do every year is head out to the opening of Redskins training camp. And this year the Connection was out there again, first day, and we got some interesting quotes about how Redskins who live in Loudoun County feel about Loudoun County. The Connection's John Shecker was out there and getting quotes, and Chris Samuel's a great Redskin had this. It's a great community. A lot of people are really nice, and they support us 110% who lives in Loudoun County. And then there's also James Thrash, who has even when he played for the Eagles.
He's still a Redskin?
Even when he played for the Eagles.
He's been a Redskin since I think they formed the Redskins.
In 2001 and 2002, he played for the Eagles. He still lived in Sterling. He liked it that much.
That's dedication to your hood.
Everybody who's listening to me in Loudoun County, you know how great Loudoun is, and the Redskins love it too. So a little fun to end the Loudoun Report tonight.
Well, speaking of the Loudoun Report, and you queued us up perfectly, Paul, for something about football. And what is it that we're going to talk about football? Of course, it's our upcoming big Fairfax Sports Report football preview blowout. John Marcario is going to be here of the Connection newspapers. Dave Bushenfeld of the Times Papers, sports editor over there, is going to be with us. And Paul Frummelt, senior sports editor at the Connection newspapers, as well as myself. I'll be here. We'll be talking about the Fairfax Sports Report football preview. And guys, when you break it down, let's talk a little bit. Let's give the folks at home a little bit of a taste of what that football preview is going to entail. We're going to have stats. We're going to have player cards. We may even throw a little bit of Madden in there. You never know what you're going to get in the Fairfax Sports Report football preview blowout. You're also going to have commentary. You're going to have opinions. We're going to take our preseason picks to win the whole daggone thing. We may even do a little fantasy action with some of the players this year, and we're going to reveal our preseason top 10. A lot to see in, what is it, John?
A blowout.
Yeah, we're going to blow it out. Get more information about the Fairfax Sports Report's football preview blowout on our website, fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Got a lot of other little topics of discussion that I'd like to banter between us four guys here. We're all sports reporters, and we all have an opinion about some of the more national things going on right now. But the focus for us should be, how does it relate to our local coverage areas? And how does it relate to specifically high school kids that we often cover? I want to get kick-started with Michael Vick. And you know what? It's all over the news. It is all over every channel. It supersedes sports. It's on Nancy Grace. It's on Greta Van Susteren. All those hacks that get up there and talk about the court system. It's everywhere, guys. And you can't avoid the fact that Michael Vick has been accused of some very serious things, dog fighting. He may even be implicated and brought an indictment. They may bring an indictment against him for RICO, which is the racketeering statute, which was created back in the day by Bobby Kennedy to fight mafiosos, guys. Okay, that's how deep Michael Vick is in it. So specifically, my question now, after railroading him here for the last 30 seconds, is, because he's a Virginia kid, from my area specifically, down in the Hampton area, I'm from Virginia Beach, and because he made such a dent in this area and a splash for high school kids, what does it mean to the local scene? Is it going to affect how kids approach being the example, being the next guy up? How will this affect kids and their learning process? Will they take something of note from this?
Well, I think I actually got my start down in Newport News, where Michael Vick was from, doing high school sports there. And I think the main thing is these kids, and some may come from a tougher area, and going up and getting that fame so quick. It's almost an example that some kids, we have tons of kids from this area that have that talent to move up to that level, and it's the too quick fame and money that it's kind of a warning sign for these kids, and it's something they should take notice of and learn from.
Dave, you talk about, Paul makes an interesting point about fame, but what I think it has to do is, I think it's very difficult to take someone from that situation, or Vic came up in a difficult upbringing, and he hung on with some of these guys that he came up with. They didn't hit the jackpot because they're a quarterback in the running back's body that can run a 4.240, whatever it is. They didn't hit the jackpot. They're hanging on, okay? What does that say about young kids in our area maybe taking note from this and maybe being a little bit more cognizant of who their friends are when they do hit the next level?
I think that's an important point, and it's just sad because he thinks he's doing the right thing, helping out his friends from back in the day, but it really just ends up bringing him down. But I think the really sad part is that in the news in general, and then with things like this, people always focus on the negative. There are a lot of athletes out there doing some really nice things, charity work, all that kind of thing. But you never hear about that stuff. It's always the dogfight and the betting scandal, all that kind of stuff. And it really turns people off from sports when you should really focus on the positive aspects of it and the good things that are being done out there as well.
Well, every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report, you'll hear more positive things about local sports, local athletes, and even at times when things like this do occur, it's often important to take the lessons from it. You make a good point. Tim Donaghy and Pac-Man Jones were next on my list. But let's steer it in a more positive direction. Let's talk about a local athlete, John, that is going to be playing for the Illini. Mike Davis of TC Williams. You and I got a chance to call a game together for the Fairfax Sports Network when they played against Lake Braddock. TC Williams, he took them as far as he could this year, and once they got to a state level, TC Williams tapered off, as did Mike Davis. We had a whole call-in show here where Mike Davis took some heat from some of our callers. I think we did what we could in defending him, but now some positive news for Davis. He was set for prep school, John, and now he's heading to the next level to play for the Illini.
Yeah, he'll be going to the Illini. Rich Sanders wrote the story for the Connection this week. He and Glenn Andrews shared the bulk of the load for the Titans. They're kind of their co-leaders this year. Over the summer, Ivan Thomas, the Titans head coach, said that Mike worked on his strength and his mental toughness. That kind of plagued him a lot during the season, and especially in that state playoff game. We'll see. Illinois is a big-time school. In the last game that we saw him and many people around the region saw him, he didn't step up in a big-time way. I think it's a good thing for him. It's just kind of an odd signing for Illinois, but it's a good thing for the Northern region. I mean, that's two big-time players out of T.C. Williams that go big-time D1, and they might get a third one this year. So
You can't look past that talent, though. He has D1 talent, definitely.
And you mentioned that Ivan Thomas even approached the subject himself of his toughness, his mental toughness, and more. You mentioned it, Paul, the kind of balance there. He's a supremely talented athlete. The kid is supremely talented. But you know what? It's often easy for us here on this side to pick at and find problems with someone that is so supremely talented. And I think he's a 17-year-old kid that now is going to get the opportunity to go to the next level. And maybe over there at Illinois, they'll get a chance to get more out of him or to show him the way. And I think he's going to make Northern Virginia proud and T.C. Williams proud as well. Someone who's made Northern Virginia and Oakton proud for many, many years, 4 years, over 100 victories in her career playing basketball. Miss Jasmine Thomas recently played all over the world. Canary Islands, they went to Spain to play the FIBA World Championship. And Jasmine helped the team to a 9-0 record and a gold medal. Obviously someone that we've all seen in our career covering high school sports here in Northern Virginia. She'll be playing at Duke soon, so kudos to Jasmine. And also Monica Wright from Freedom Woodbridge also played, Forest Park, rather, played on that team alongside with her. So another local product in the Fairfax Sports Network's coverage area that also played alongside of Jasmine for the U19 USA basketball team. So fantastic for Ms. Thomas. All right, guys, I want to thank the folks that make this show possible. And, of course, we're talking about our fantastic underwriters, guys. They're the ones that keep us going every single week. CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Special thanks to our teammates. And if you haven't heard, coming soon, Dave Bushenfeld, what's on the docket for us?
The blowout.
Fairfax Sports Report football preview blowout BJ.
We're gonna have that didn't sound right. we're gonna have a wealth of information for you. August 29th at 10 p.m., August 30th at 7, and the 31st at 2 a.m. Until then, we're signing off here on the Fairfax Sports Report, but you can't let us go too far because you can find us on the web. Photos of John Marcario, the beautiful ladies' man on the FairfaxSportsNetwork.com. FSN on the web. You can see our bios, pictures of our guests, and you can also find old games from the Fairfax Sports Network that many of us had the opportunity to call and be around the local sports scene. Coming up soon, Grant Hill's first game at South Lakes on Fairfax Sports Network's Classic. Join us soon for our blowout football preview. Pound it.
Oh.